Ah, dragons, the titular character of Dungeons and Dragons. What would we do without them? What would we do without their raw power, their magical potential, and more importantly, what would we do without their mounds and mounds of treasure? Hello adventurers, and welcome back to the Red Quills. My name is Ryan, and this is day 19. Yes, this is day 19 of the Red Quills map making challenge for November, the Map-vember that we're doing. I've been making a video every single day for 19 days. I can't quite believe it. Have you been enjoying it? Let me know in the comments below. I have loved seeing everyone's submissions and suggestions. It's been really wonderful to actually just focus on making videos. And though there is a lot of editing, which is but the maps themselves are going really, really well. I don't know if you can see, but behind me, I've started putting them all up. What I'm going to do at the end of the month is I'm just going to share some footage of just everything all together, as well as in, the stuff that I upload on the Patreon and on the Legend Keeper and all the lore that I've been putting there and everything that's on social media, on the Discord. It's going to be just such an achievement when we've got there. I can't believe we're nearly 2/3 of the way there. Anyway, thanks for putting up with that. If you're new here, welcome. Don't let that rant put you off. Check out the introduction to the Red Quills Map-vember, which is in the video at the start of this series, and join the Discord. It's a great community. We share ideas all the time. If you like making maps, if you want some tips and tricks, you can always tag me there. I love chatting about these kinds of things when I'm not, making videos, as I am currently doing. So what we're going to do today is we are going to explore a dragon's hoard, because I've run dragons myself in the past. I've done a couple of dragon-centric campaigns. I think they're a wonderful antagonist, and I feel like when you go and face the dragon and you slay it, that the treasure itself should provide as much enrichment. I was going to avoid the word, but players are like zoo animals. We must give them enrichment, and the Hoard needs to give them as much enrichment as the fight with the dragon itself. I mean, look at examples in popular culture when you've got, in The Hobbit, the Hoard provides so much more conflict than even the dragon does itself. The idea of that unbounded richness that can divide whole armies against one another, that's fantastic. We want to be able to work with that. So how are we going to create a hoard for a dragon that is going to challenge the players in a similar way, beyond just, the moral consequences of suddenly being billionaires, and into how we can also explore it using the powers of the dragon, using the lore that we've already established. So going back down memory lane for a second, all the way back to episode number 4, when we did Khoraman's Spire. Khoraman himself is an ancient amethyst dragon. He is brought into existence as a kind of a god back in the days when the world was young, and he has a lair that is built around his sort of domain, which is the astral plane, its strange gravities, its amethysts and crystals themselves, and the storage of knowledge over time. So what we're going to do is we're going to revisit that lair hundreds, if not thousands of years later, when Khoraman is gone. He's either dead or he's gone off on, a pilgrimage into the astral plane to try to find some wisdom or consider a new perspective, and his hoard has been abandoned. So when I did that and I designed the spire, we didn't actually add any hoard chambers to it. And that was, for specific reasons, because I said that we'd do it later, and now we are finally doing it later. So what I want to do is get out an A4 sheet of paper, get out a Fineliner pen, actually a few of them, they're in the materials list below. And we're going to start by designing out, I think, 7 individual characters. 7's a good number. It's going to help us to kind of figure out all the different challenges that we can face. So in addition to referencing some of the former areas in the spire, the Thought Keep and the Crucible, which are the top 2 levels of the spire itself, what we're going to do is we're going to design the lair itself to have different areas. Now what I'm thinking is that long ago, when Khoraman first moved into the mountain that would become the spire, he found a series of natural caverns that he used, his gravitational powers, his force magic, to hollow out and create the gems that would store the knowledge that he uses to highlight his powers and to make monuments to his achievements. And so at the top, if we've got a natural network of caverns there, it would be really fun if his method of storing his treasure, of keeping it safe from those that want to steal it, is to use his powers to do that. So the beginning is the gate. where long ago Khoraman used his magic to send the initial chambers of the Hoard from our material plane into the astral plane, like the interior of a bag of holding or a portable hole. It didn't exist on the material plane anymore. It could only be accessed by using the powers of the dragon, by harmonizing with the crystals. So we use a little bit of sound magic, of music in the first version of Khoraman's Spire, and we're going to use that here. So we're going to go to the fractured rift where the gate to it once was. And this is a puzzle and a mechanical trap, because once the dragon suspended the Hoard and the series of cavern in that extra dimensional space, and now it's fallen back into the material plane without anyone to continue powering it. And what we want to do is make use of that disaster. So some of these caverns exist in a sort of half state. They're half there and half here, and it plays havoc with gravity, and it creates a hostile environment for the players. So what we want to do is the crystals have to be struck in tune. It no longer opens the gate into the astral plane because the caverns are here, but it does mean that it's much, much easier to pass through. The players can pass through and, perhaps make a constitution save or take 4d10 force, but if they do strike the gems in time, in the original, opening password that the dragon created, then that gate opens fully and they can move through without taking any damage. After they move past that initial puzzle, we're going to come to what I'll call the hung gallery, which is a little bit of a pun there, because this is where he stored his art. Amethyst dragons are known to collect knowledge, and this is where he would have collected the pieces of priceless artifacts, of artworks, of tapestries that were made either in his honor or as part of the world's history. However, these caverns falling back from the astral plane into the material plane has made gravity all screwy, so the ground is cracked and pockets of weightlessness and heaviness exist within this room. Some chunks of rock float in the air, and in other places the heightened gravity has crushed statues down into rubble. So as they move through, it's an altered environment, and it will be really fun if we make it into a tactical combat as well. So when Khoraman designed the Hoard, he also added in a few guards. Some of the constructs that we talked about in the first video, those golems or those peacekeeping droids, that can also be here as well. And they're used to the effects of the environment, or they're resistant to it because they're naturally made of inanimate material. But it will make combat really fun if in some places movement doubles or jumping extends over the pocket of weightlessness, and in other places the players become over encumbered or they slow down. It becomes the equivalent of difficult terrain. So that's a way of making combat really, really fun and interesting that references the gravity powers of the dragons. Then we're going to move on into the sunken treasure. This is a part that I wanted to reference a little bit more about the astral plane. Now there's so much to talk about the astral plane. I haven't actually really done it in a video so far. We haven't made any astral plane dungeons yet, but there's so much to talk about there that isn't just the weightlessness and the gravity and the timelessness of the place. There's also the astral pools, the star pools, which is a method of moving between planes that I wanted to reference here. So as it fell back through, a large pool of water merged with the cavern. The water was in the material plane, the cavern was in the astral plane. And water, of course, is another theme for amethyst dragons. They can manipulate water, they can see through it, they can create visions in it, and I thought that was fun as well. But the water is inherently magical here. Looking into the surface of the water will show the past or the present or the possible future, and reaching into the pool releases wild magic. So they've got to figure out how to cross the pool without touching it, and how to deal with the consequences of their spells going awry. If they're pushed into the pools, then horrible things will happen to them. But also, if they stay at the edge of the pool and see a possible future in which they have a horrible death or a wonderful life, then that's also something that will keep them pinned down while other forces move through the rest of the cavern. Then we're going to head over to the Prism Geode, because off of that sunken pool there are 3 different caverns. The Prism Geode was once like the Thought Keep was in the original Spire. This is where The Amethyst Dragon stored knowledge and memories and power in individual crystals and then hung them on the walls. And it's a hostile environment now. So what I want to do is, it's like a whole mechanical puzzle in and of itself. The shadows of the players as they move across these great crystals will make reflections that come out of the walls and attack them, versions of themselves in possible futures or past. Like we've just encountered in the Sunken Treasure, they will come from the crystals and attack the players. I would suggest just using the stat blocks of shadows themselves, but making them immune to psychic damage. And that way we can have combat that's only triggered by the players rather than having more robots like that. On the far side of the Sunken Treasure, we're going to come to where the vault used to be. So we've also divided this area, I don't know if you've noticed, into different kinds of treasure. The first was, art and decoration. Then we've got thoughts, memories, and power. We're moving over to artifacts, like magical items. And then finally, of course, we'll get to the treasure itself, which is just the gold and the jewels. And this place where we currently are, which is the Vault of Shards and the Shadow, that's where all the magical items used to be, either created by Khoraman or given to Khoraman for safekeeping. And it'd be great if you can have some legendary items in here, but they've been here for so long and they were damaged by the phase back into the material plane so that their powers are leaking. So it would be really, really cool to design some traps specifically around the powers of, artifacts and legendary items, so that the players have to choose whether or not to try to take these obviously dangerous broken objects and deal with the consequences of that, or whether they just navigate their way through them and try to avoid the damage. And also very cool if you have sentient items in here as well. But in the Shadow, I wanted to take the concept of those artifacts and give a specific example. So the most powerful artifact that Khoraman created was a shield, which would protect its wearer from all mundane damage. So, whoever used it would be immune to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage. But more than that, it gave them the ability to Misty Step at will from one part of the battlefield to the other. However, over time, the magic decayed, and again, when the caverns dropped from the astral plane into the material plane, it damaged the shield itself, which couldn't exist in two places at once. It's specifically designed to already do that. So that crossing over of the thresholds damaged the magic and accidentally opened a portal to the far realms, through which any number of aberrations are starting to teem through. So that's when you can start to add some more risks to the players. They won't head further past the Vault of Shards because of all of the environmental hazards there, the effects of, psychic leakage from sentient weapons, from, barriers of heat created by gauntlets of flame or shields of fire giants. So that's kept them trammeled in here, but as soon as they go in, if they're trying to find a specific artifact in the Hoard, then they're going to encounter creatures from the far realms, which is, I don't need to tell you how dangerous that's going to be. Final area is what I'll call the Hoard itself. And although we have dealt with, valuable artifacts and gems of power and magic items, this is where the gold and the jewels were kept. And I think it's very, very fun to head on back to Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, can recommend it as a book, and take a page out of its book and have the Hoard be taken over by the creature that the dragon originally placed there to protect it. Not a construct, not something from the far realms, not a reflection of the interloper itself, but something much simpler. It was once a mimic treasure chest and is now a mimic the size of a hoard. So it waits patiently for anyone to come in to try to take the treasure, sticks them to the surface of the pile of gold, and begins to eat them one by one. That's a fantastic twist to pull upon them. There's less gold than they thought there was because the mimic has eaten it, especially if you add in, hoard scarabs, gold coins that are actually, tiny insects that eat gold over time, so that there's less there than they thought there was, and they accidentally add these scarabs to their own gold pouches, and the scarabs eat their treasure over time as well. But overall, we're adding in as many difficulties as we possibly can so that they are not blinded by greed when they come to the Hoard of one of the world's most powerful dragons. So overall, that's what we've created, from environmental hazards to falling through the astral plane to things coming through rifts to defenses that were set up long ago and are still effective. What do you think? What did you design for your own Hoard? I can't wait to see some of your ideas. This is not the first hoard that I designed. I actually did another one for the Temple of Aquilanda, which is one of my previous videos. You can check that out. But I am going to finish it up there for today and give you the prompt for tomorrow. All right, so tomorrow I've been making some of these much more cognitive maps. Is more about the concept than the aesthetics of them. So I wanted to, go a bit abroad and do something a little bit more artistic tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a coded map, and I would challenge you to do the same. So what I want to do is I want to take the existing maps that I have of the lands of Anakos. And yes, I have not yet done a realm map of Anakos. I'm saving that for later, but I'm going to use the ancient map and the trader's map as the basis for this. And I want to create maps that will have been left by a treasure hunter who will be able to tell the players where to find points of interest using code and symbolism. It's still a map. It's going to be more artistic so that the person who holds it isn't sure quite what they're looking at. How do you disguise the meaning of a map using artistry rather than having a straight up document? How can we create handouts that are puzzles as well as maps? So that's what we're doing tomorrow. Good luck. I can't wait to hear ideas. And until then, happy mapping, and I will see you tomorrow for day 20 of this challenge.